Hey everybody, happy Saturday. So, I just got done watching another episode of Dear Mama, So Many Tears, season 1, episode 3. Um, I'm telling you, I'm really enjoying the series, and I'm kind of a hard person to impress when it comes to stuff that's like real, like documentary real. But I really like it. And I just want to say this while I have your attention. Yes, I know I have a pimple right here. Okay, I don't know when it's gonna go away, but I have one. All right, so please try not to, you know, don't go in on me in the comments or anything. And thank you to all y'all who left comments on the last one, because like I said, I'm a Tupac fan, but I still like to, learn about different stuff and challenge myself. So, feel free to leave your comments and stuff like that, and what y'all think about what's being presented. So we start off with Tupac being charged with shooting two off duty police officers in none other than Atlanta, okay, at 22 years old. Um, Now he was let out on bond. Now, a piece of me, as I heard this being replayed, that already raised questions for me. I said, what black man gets bond for shooting any police officer, let alone two on duty or off duty, hell, in the police academy training? So I had already felt like, and people think, oh, because it's Atlanta and there's some black people in charge. No. Okay, Atlanta is still in Georgia. It's like people who say, I'm not from Florida, I'm from Miami. No, no. You got to take the good with the bad, okay? And don't think black people can't be just as messed up. I'm going to get to that. Anyway, so they have Shock G from Digital Underground, and he's talking or whatever about the different stuff. And Digital Underground was the group, Tupac started rapping or whatever with when he got his first chance to get on wax or whatever. So he said, based on like the news, the radio, to even his family, his friends, he was like, Tupac started to look a little crazy in the way he was acting. He said he did have a short temper. And he said sometimes, even me as his friend, I thought he would blow small situations out of proportion. And he was like, but to me, it wasn't just about being crazy or being a lunatic. It was about not backing down when you know you're right. And when you live in a society where you are standing up, this is me talking now, for marginalized people, specifically black people, because anti-blackness is real. It's real, it's real, it's real. I don't care. People of color my ass. Anti-blackness is real. And then anti-blackness amongst black people is real. Okay? And when you're standing up for people in a society that already hates you, and you're unwilling to back down, even out of fear, people will hate you. But it takes not only nerve, but strength and real conviction to do what he's doing. And I respect that shit. I respect it. All right. Okay, so then we get more details on the situation as it's playing out. That was just how the episode began. So one of his friends, and there's several people talking throughout this. So one of his friends was like, first, we didn't know they were off-duty cops. Let's be clear. Um, the two cops were out partying in downtown Atlanta off duty. That already sounded suspect to me. And anybody who knows anything about Atlanta, my first suspicion was like, because Atlanta was a black city by then. I was like, they probably okay. If you know, you know. And that still seemed a little weird. So his cousin was like, we didn't know they were cops. We knew they were two white men in Georgia, and he shot them. He was like, that's how you got hung in those days. And he was saying those days, like that shit wasn't in the mid 1990s. Like that was true in the 1960s. That was true at the beginning of the 1900s. That was true in the late 1800s. When black people first became free and were no longer free labor. Okay, hanging you were no longer a value to white people. Okay, let's not act like Ahmed Aubrey didn't just happen either. Like I was like, we still in them days. But anyway, so Pac basically saw these white guys punch these black men in the face without a cause, no provocation or whatever. And to Snoop Dogg's point, he was like, he could have easily saw that shit go down and said, man, that's fucked up what they doing in them ninjas. That's, he said, but Pac was one of those people who couldn't just get in his car and go away. Like it was about protecting for him another black person. Like, okay, these white people got their crew, we got our crew too. And I'm gonna protect another black person. He was like, that's really who he was. And that's not everybody, to his point, not everybody can do that. And I don't know that I think it's something to applaud that people don't consider that. I think we all should take a hard look at ourselves when we see something going wrong and we don't say anything. So I mean, I respect it, like I said. So that's the kind of person I am. Like, you can argue. That's why I'm always getting into trouble one way or another. Whether it's for standing up for black kids in these white schools I teach at, or calling out racist shit when it happens to them, and a little less often when it's me, when I have to stand up for myself. Because every fight, I can't fight for myself, or I'm not willing to fight for myself, but I can do it for other people. I'm one of those. I got to work on it, but you get me. But something in me can't seem to say that is that black person's problem. I can't do that as easy. I mean, like, you can watch reality TV and kind of joke and stuff. I'm talking about in real life. Something in me can't just do that. And I paid for it in many ways. I really have. It's not an easy thing to do, but I also can't live with myself if I see it. I don't know. Like I said, I just was raised differently. Especially I think when you realize, and I pay for it in many ways, especially when you realize that other black people you have helped will willingly throw you under a speeding Greyhound bus on the New Jersey Turnpike. And even when you know that about that black person and you know it's just happening to them because they're black, even if they don't know it, when it's wrong, it's wrong. And I just cannot jump on the bandwagon because I know what eventually what you're doing to this black person simply because they're black. I'm not aloof that I would think you wouldn't do me like that. Okay? Okay. Some black people think they're different. Don't get me started on that. So Snoop Dogg told the story of how he shot these two police officers, Tupac. And whether you want to justify the shooting or not, he was like, he was a warrior. He was like, and then they interviewed Mike Tyson a little bit, and he was like, yeah, he came from, fighters, a whole long line of freedom fighters. And I was like, he sure did. They said he got bail, like I said, after shooting these two people. And as soon as the judge hit his gavel, Tupac strolled out like motherfucking George Jefferson with his arms. Like, y'all ain't gonna do shit. And I don't know why, but that shit gave me a kiki. I probably should have been scared for him, but that shit was funny. And something about that was gangster, but it was like funny as hell to me. And Snoop Dogg was like, even though like it's funny even now, he was like, you can't show up to court and kind of laugh in the court's face like that. And I was like, yeah, especially as a black man, but that shit was funny. So Afeni, they said Afeni's mother was really concerned at that point though, because he had a lot of press around him, much more than before. He was getting a lot more attention, and unfortunately he was getting into a lot more trouble. And they were worried that he might be provoked into doing something. Because like I said, he's one of those people that if he feels like something is wrong or he's being done wrong, it's difficult for him. So, literally, as he came out of the courtroom after he did his George Jefferson thing, the paparazzi's all around his car. And don't get me started on the paparazzi. The paparazzi should be fucking illegal. The way they are able to take pictures of people's personal business, follow them around. I remember years ago when Halle Berry crashed her car, and they didn't even make a big deal out of that. They acted like it was her fault for being in the press. No, y'all are harassing this woman. Anyway, and he basically, this was times in the 90s, and they would not move out the way of his car. And he was like, I'm going to run y'all over. I'm going to take my Benz and run y'all over. And they're like, oh, he's threatening us. Well, get out the way, motherfucker. Anyway, he was like, where was y'all at? And he's like yelling at us. Where was y'all at when I won my school play award? Y'all always come around when something goes wrong. I was like, yeah, Tupac, they do. But in all fairness, boo, I don't think you were famous when you won your school play award. But you go, boy. All right. So it was clear. Fame, the pressure and attention of the fame, the lies that come with being under public scrutiny, and then the difficulty, I think, of staying true to yourself. And he was 20 motherfucking 2. He was still a baby. All of it was getting to him. How could it not? He's a fucking human being. And I think this documentary has done a good job of like dealing with a lot of the hard stuff that came in Tupac's life. And not so much so to the point where they appear as complete fans, shout out to Alan Hughes, or, completely against him, but really dealing with the complexities of somebody who had a very short life but had a hell of an impact. So they started talking about how his mother, his sister, his close family would ask the guys that were around him, like, y'all are supposed to be watching him. Can't y'all talk to him? When I talk to him, he won't listen. And they were like, well, he won't listen to us either. And they said, like, telling Tupac to do something like calm down, they were like, never helped. they were like, he would say stuff like, calm down. Well, this is what got me here. Nobody cared before. Now the whole world loves me. And I was like, yeah, it's still that need. People need love and acceptance. Um, the hierarchy of needs. It's true. And people will look for it in any way they can get it if they've lacked it. So I'm enjoying this documentary because it's not, like I said, perpetuating the narrative of the Biggie versus Tupac bullshit all the way through. Okay, we know that becomes a thing, but goddamn. But it allows for a humane view of Tupac and through primary source material. So we're hearing him talk about his experiences. We're getting the voiceovers from Athene. We're getting like old interviews with her, like transcriptions from court and stuff like that. That's why I like it, because you can take away from it, but based on like clear sort of sources, if you will. So Tupac's manager was talking, and he said he was basically talking about how Tupac was one of the smartest, stupidest people he had ever met. Okay, and I was like, yep, that's youth. So Mike Tyson was like, actually, he was really educated. He was really smart. And Mike Tyson was like, I felt like, though, he was embarrassed by how educated he was, which isn't hard to believe. It's hard to be young, gifted, and black. Shout out to Lorraine Hansberry. Young, Gifted, and Black was a series of like really short stories, and in it, in case y'all ever wonder or want to go back and read it, it's a good read, but it's blocked differently. It's a series of little stories, and there's always a black person in the story that has the vision to see something better for themselves, or who is very, very smart and kind of punished for it in some shape, way, or form, who may have more economically than others and doesn't realize that that's a threat to other black people. And there's always something in every story that distinguishes their intellect and makes them in many ways feel isolated. And that is what I think is the power of that particular set of short stories that Lorraine Hansberry wrote. And then, of course, Nina Simone wrote a song to go along with it, and Aretha Franklin re-sang it. But anyway, it's not any less true for him than it was when she wrote it back in the 60s or whatever. So as I heard the interviews with Tupac himself playback, I understand why there were people who couldn't appreciate his genius at the time. And that always happens to really smart people. I don't think genius is appreciated for a long time. The delivery, though, could be wild. Okay? I love it, but I understand why it may have been hard for people to receive that. And he was like, everything I do is positive. If I tell my brother to take the same gun he was using or gonna use on another brother, and instead kill a cop on the street that's trying to kill the both of you, how's that not positive? If that's not positive, crack don't sell. I said, well then, take it how you want. Hard to argue with that one. All right, so Tupac has hits, and when they start replaying some of it, it just, gosh, 90s music, I swear, is only rivaled by that in the 1960s. That's it. That was a fucking decade. Do you hear me? So hits like Keep Your Head Up. I mean, they still hit. They still hit. There's nobody like this motherfucker. I don't give a shit. Greatest rapper of all time. Come and go hard. I don't give a fuck. Okay? I don't. All right? We could talk about a lyricist and all such. Tupac's the greatest rapper that ever did it. And you want to know why? Well, one, because he's Tupac, but two, also because he was smart. He was reading. It's like how I talk about, or I've said this to people, it's like you ever see a comedian that was really funny when they first came out, and then it's like a few years down the road, they're not funny at all, or you're like, what the fuck? And what happened? How come they're not funny anymore? I personally believe it's because the things that made them funny was what connected them to their roots, to their home life, to the everyday life, whether you grew up in the projects, or you grew up poor, or you grew up in the suburbs as a black person, or it's something that when you get that kind of fame and you move out to Hollywood with a bunch of other rich people, your experiences change. So the things that you can make fun of and relate to so many different people on that level, you can't do it anymore. You can't, because you've now gone away from it. Like, I don't think Eddie Murphy's funny like that. I don't think the Wayans are as funny as they used to be. Whereas I feel like somebody like Chris Rock, like his movies aren't the same, but in terms of stand up, somebody like D.O. Hewley in terms of their stand up, because theirs is more educationally based, like real critiques of society. See, that's always present. So you can always grow in that when you're not attached in the same way to protecting the establishment, right? It's not just about, oh, the ghetto girl on the corner, because I feel like the Wayans still are like imitating black women in this ghetto way. And I'm like, this shit is tired. And I don't know what black women y'all around, but the ones I know don't act like that. So up your game, motherfucker. Anyway, but I say that to say the reason why there's nobody like Tupac is because even with Tupac's fame and money, he's really educated and intelligent. He can't separate himself despite being in LA, despite making money. He can't separate that, and that makes his lyrics so real and it makes them resonate with so many people across the board, even in his death. So November 1993, Tupac was nominated for an NAACP Image Award, and I was like, oh, the good old days. And it made me reminisce, and NAACP is not the same thing as BET, but y'all remember back when BET was owned by black people? Bob Johnson, and he sold it to white people. And it was BET News, and Tavis Smiley had a whole news hour. He would be taking hip hop people to the floor. He would interview people like Prince, and they would take his ass to the carpet too. But it was like real intellectual conversation. It was like black TV for black people. And I thought about the NAACP awards back when they meant something, when they weren't giving them out to random ass white people on HGTV who build houses for black people. Like, shit has changed. Anyway, so this is a few months after the charges shooting the cops. He has charges against him for sexual abuse and sodomy. And I remember reading this in the book. I forget who it was written by, but it's called The Hip Hop Generation. And it was one of the first like scholarly books written on the history of hip hop and how it had affected and black women, maybe around early, I mean, maybe the year 2000 actually. Anyway, so he has charges against him for sexual abuse and sodomy. So allegedly, he helped a friend sodomize a woman in a hotel room in Midtown Manhattan. So his former manager was like, I was shocked when I heard about it. So she said, his former manager's name is Karen, and she said even he was shocked. Like, he couldn't believe that anybody would believe that about him. And she was like, if you knew him, you couldn't believe it. So he denied always, and this has been consistent all three episodes in everything they've shown. He denies being a gangster rapper consistently. He feels like that is like media produced, like I'm helping my community. I'm not up here rah rah in the same way. And it's funny because he's one of the names that people have just created synonymously with gangster rap, and he rejected that. And I think it's important to understand labels that people reject and labels that people embrace but are still associated with them. Just something to think about. So that night, this supposedly went down. Okay, so his personal assistant slash security slash backup dancer slash road manager slash something else, and his name was Man Man. Okay, so Man Man is giving us the story, all right? He tells us the story. So he said they were in New York filming Above the Rim. I'm be honest, I've never seen Above the Rim. Somebody's gonna be like, girl, you never see that? Yeah, I didn't see Set It Off till I went to college, so just read me. Oh well. All right, so he was like, they showed Tupac talking about it, and he was like, this is a true acting job. He said, because I don't know how to play basketball, and if it wasn't for Michael Jordan, I wouldn't even know what a dunk was. So anyway, they said in this process, there's a lot of people trying to get around him, which happens when you're famous, right? There's a lot of people trying to get at you, get around you, get your shit. So they said he met this street dude. His name was Haitian Jack. That was his like street name or whatever. And they said Tupac was like a method actor. They said in the part he played in the movie Above the Rim, his character's name was Birdie. He said, but the way he was acting in the movie, the way he basically created the essence of the character was based on this real guy, Haitian Jack, who had kind of infiltrated his circle. Like, he was a street dude, and like, it was kind of like Mike Tyson mentioned earlier that he felt like Tupac was ashamed of being educated. There was something about that street lifestyle that he wanted to be connected to so importantly. And I think that was a way of distinguishing himself from Hollywood and staying close to black people. But the thing is, and the odd part is, he already had that. He already had that. And that's, but he was young. You gotta, and it's important to understand that in context. He was young. Um, they said he wanted that street cred bad, but they said he was overdoing it. They said even crazy ass, rapist ass, I'm saying this, Mike Tyson tried to warn him, like, you gotta be cool because by the time I'm coming out, you're gonna be coming in like if you don't calm down, right? So Haitian Jack introduced him to the woman at the hotel. Okay. So this was apparently a chick that Haitian Jack had introduced Tupac to. Tupac and this woman had had casual sex at his hotel, whatever. All right, things happen. Now, they kept referring to her as a girl, and I can't stand when people do that. A woman is a woman, a man is a man, a boy is a boy, a girl is a girl. Okay? So if we're talking about a grown woman, I need y'all to refer to her as a grown woman. Like, how old was she? That we keep referring to this individual as a girl, okay? But she's with these grown men. Like, I don't like that shit. Anyway, so Haitian Jack, like I said, is responsible for introducing her. So about a week later at the hotel, Haitian Jack said, like, this is my thing. He's a street dude, but he's like hanging out at this big hotel with Tupac all the time. Like, some things don't add up, and when people see you with people and they don't understand why, sometimes there's a reason, and it's because there's something about that relationship that's off to the average eye, and sometimes you gotta listen to that shit. All right. So a Haitian Jack said, well, what's up with that little shorty you had over here? And Man was like, the next thing I know, she pulls up. He said, so I guess as the road manager, I went downstairs to get her and bring her upstairs. So she goes to the room with Pop. And he said there were two adjoining rooms. He said he saw her massaging Pop, whatever the fuck that means. He said 5 minutes after that, he got up and left the room. He was like, because we had to get up early because he has to film. So I went to the other room and I just went to sleep. He was like, he was done. Like, whatever they do, whatever. So then Haitian Jack's friend had also gone into the same room with Tupac, this young woman or young lady, and Haitian Jack. So there's 3 men in there, and it's her. And he said they were in the room for a real long time. And then Haitian Jack's friend comes out the room, and the young lady is crying. Now, once again, I don't know how old she is because they keep saying this girl. I don't know how old she is, but she's crying. And Haitian Jack's friend, this guy we have no name for, said, man, she's tripping. And Man said, I was like, she's tripping. What's that mean? And he said, in my mind, all I was thinking was, what the hell did y'all do? Like, this making this girl cry like this, right? Or this young lady cry like this. He said she started crying and saying, Pac's wrong, Pac's wrong. And he said, that's just what she kept repeating to me. She said, he put me in this position. He was like, then he was thinking, now this is a whole different thing for him now. He said, so I just tried to calm her down and started saying, okay, relax, relax. And she just started screaming and said, get away from me, get away from me. So I don't know if she was right. And anytime somebody's had a traumatic incident like that sexually, even if you try to help them, they're so scared of anything that's going to happen to them. So he said, but with a street dude, you just never know what the fuck is up their sleeve, what they're willing to do. They're sleazy. They'll treat people any old kind of way, men and women. They don't tell the truth. They always have an ulterior motive. So he said by the time his friend, by the time him and Tupac got to the elevator after the incident and they got to the bottom floor, he was like, we were detained. He said till this day, he does not know what happened in that room. He said, all I can say is I know my brother, Pac loved women and would never take from one. And take from one, of course, means to rape, And he said Pac was upset because of what was done to her. But at the same time, he was also upset because of what he was being accused of doing. So it seems like a whole lot of mess, right? It's unclear. We're not getting, certain things. So he said him and Pac ended up getting 18 charges for this shit. And I'm thinking to myself, how the fuck Does man get charged for this? All he did was go down on the elevator. Like he's still confused on the story from the room. Um, so from gun charges to sodomy to sexual abuse, and he said based on what he knew, this is Man talking. He said Haitian Jack's lawyer cooperated with the police to really get him off. He said he already had a record, a long one. He said from top of the ceiling to the bottom of the floor. He said, but he never spent a lot of time in jail. I know, because street dudes selling drugs and shit, they always have money. They have money for good lawyers. Good lawyers know good judges. They pay people off and they screw over other people. That's why I'm never like impressed with people who brag about having sold drugs and then they in a rap game. Like Jay-Z doesn't impress me. And you want to know why? And I'm not saying people can't change their life and that he has it and that kind of thing. But my thing is, you sold dope to your community. Same reason why I couldn't fuck with Biggie like that. Yeah, you sold dope to your community and then you rapping about how people called the police on you as you was selling that poison. That's a sellout move to me. It's a sellout fucking move. Nicky Barnes. The way he gave up everybody, including the mother of his children, who he was married to and had cheated on. Gave up every fucking body to get less time and then to go into witness protection. That's some bitch shit. People who do that are sellouts. So fuck Haitian Jack. But anyway, they said when the documentary contacted him, he denied all charges of sexual assault. Okay, motherfucker. Well, I guess you don't have to admit to shit because you... Never mind. All right, so he said Haitian Jack's lawyer split after he got Haitian Jack off from him and Tupac. He said, and his homie that was at the hotel that night, he said, walk past me and Pac in the lobby and nobody knows who he is till this day. He said, I still don't have a name. He basically don't even have a name for this man. It's a hangers on. And I said, ain't that about a bitch? I'm going to be honest. This shit does sound like a setup. It does sound like a setup. It does. For the police to be called like that and you like, huh? That shit does sound like a setup. But street motherfuckers will turn you in. Not to mention what we're going to see with COINTELPRO in this same documentary. They did a really good job. Shout out to Alan Hughes. So, he felt it, and he felt that he was set up. Like, I agree. They said Afeni, his mother, felt sympathy for the woman for having been sexually assaulted. She said, but she didn't believe her son did it. And, Aunt Glo, who's telling a lot of the story, Aunt Glo and Afeni felt like they were, when Tupac started to go through these trials, she said it felt like we were reliving a part of their life. And she said because Afeni had been in court for things she hadn't done and had been accused, had been persecuted by the government. And his aunt was like, what he said in court in front of the judge, she said with tears rolling down his face, over and over again, was I should have protected her. As far as I'm concerned, that is a statement where you are a bystander and having bystander guilt. It's not criminal guilt. And sometimes you learn later what you should have done or what you wish you could have done because you have a conscience. And I think he was under the influence of these people that he thought could give him street cred, not realizing they were using him, probably working for the police for all we know. Because Tupac is not cornered and people are not going after him. It's since when do they give a damn about black people killing black people? They're after him because of his political message. Anyway, so Tupac and the story of his father. So there was this man named Leg Saunders who Glo was like, Afeni had a sexual relationship with him. There's another man named Billy. Afeni had a sexual relationship with. And Lex Saunders, that's the man's name, or his street name. He worked for Nicky Barnes and his crew, so he was in and out of jail a lot. Billy, I'm not sure if he had been a Black Panther or whatever. But they were basically like, even Billy, who's supposedly Tupac's father. And Glo was even explaining, she was like, when you're under that kind of political pressure and stress, they're just living day to day. So any kind of enjoyment you can get, that's how you're thinking. Because at any time you can go away for life. She was young, whatever. So Glo said Tupac always thought Legs was his father. She said because he was a street dude, he was in and out of jail. And she said, I think he kind of liked the fantasy of that. And even though Afeni told Gloria, Aunt Glo or whatever, that she didn't know who his father was. She told Tupac this too. Glo said she's not sure whether or not she knew who the father of the child was. She said, I don't know if it's that she really didn't know or she just said that because she still wanted that street fantasy too with Leg Saunders. Because Glo was like, I really think Billy is his father. I just feel like Tupac, as somebody once said, Tupac doesn't really look like anybody. Like, he looks like his mother. He really looked like his mother. But he just has a unique look. So anyway, October 1970, so it switches back to his mother's experience and how they mirrored each other. It's incredible. So Afeni was on trial as a Black Panther. And Glo was like, I was never afraid for her because she was never afraid for herself. She was like, she was really tough. She says she always prepared for court and she was calling witnesses and cross-examining them, had never been to law school, and this trial continued. I was like, that's some badass shit. You got to be a bad motherfucker to do that shit. So they were in the process of this trial and the witnesses brought forth. That's when they started to realize how many and who had infiltrated the Black Panther Party as FBI informants, taking back information. And this is, of course, called the counterintelligence program, also known as COINTELPRO. And specifically, I know from having studied this, the government referred to this as, quote, the ghetto informant program. Anytime they had Black people that were going into these organizations who had previously committed crimes, so on and so forth, for the most part. But they also talk about police. So they mentioned this man named Gene Roberts. And Gene Roberts was a security lieutenant in the Black Panther Party, right? He had also been Malcolm X's bodyguard. I wasn't ready for this. Turns out Malcolm X drew his last breath from Gene Roberts, who was supposedly giving him CPR, who was supposedly his bodyguard, but was really an undercover cop pretending to be his bodyguard. I'm telling you, there's some low-life motherfuckers in the world. You are better off not being involved than to do things that really hurt and harm people. That man was murdered with multiple bullets in front of his kids, and the government helped orchestrate the entire thing, and so did them bastards in the Nation of Islam. Fuck them. Okay? So they started going through this whole list of snitches, right? And I'm going to tell you why this isn't hard for me to believe. And it's not simply because I have studied this regularly. I've also seen this regularly, okay? Working in white spaces, as most of us probably do, I have seen white people, and worst of all, whitewashed Black people, know exactly what to say when it comes to calling out things that are racist or inequitable, saying they like certain music artists and have read all these books on how to improve the world of education and will take every breath in their body to tear me, a Black history teacher, down and talk to me one way about one thing privately and then get in a meeting and act like that shit never happened and fuck me over. Okay, it has taken a few harsh lessons, but I've learned. And it makes you weary of helping and supporting other Black people because most people aren't like the Afenis and the Tupacs and the Salahs of the world, okay? And you know it's the right thing to do, but that shit hurts when you have tried your best to do what you know is right for other Black people, and Black people just do awful things to you. Not simply hurtful, awful things. But many of them are like the Gene Roberts of the world. They want to live without the brunt of what it means to be Black. And at least they want to live to remind white people, see, I'm Black, but I'm not Black like that. Like people with the name Salah or Tupac or Afeni and who believe in this, that, and the other. See, I can be one of y'all. Fuckers, get the fuck out of here. So Afeni Shakur apparently cross-examined an enemy, that's what they called him, named Yewa. All right, so Yewa was supposed to be somebody that was in the crew who had been an undercover cop who they thought was a comrade at the time in the Black Panther Party and was about to be promoted from detective to lieutenant after turning the Panthers over in the New York Party. So the prosecutors, even as she cross-examined Yewa, the prosecutors called Afeni a little ghetto girl, as she was defending herself, saying she's not a lawyer, but she was. And I was like, first of all, where the fuck y'all get off talking to her like that? Where the fuck y'all get off saying this shit? Oh, this shit was pissing me off, okay? But she was cross-examining him like a motherfucker. So she said she was going down the thing, and I wrote this down. I kept going. I was like, you know what? This shit is about it. So she said, you testified. She's talking to Yewa, who she thought was, a comrade in the Black Panther Party, finds out he's an undercover police officer and he's about to get a promotion for turning them in. She said, you testified you were a police officer and you testified you were a Panther. So when you seduced all these women in the party, were you a police officer or a Panther? They said he did not have an answer. I said, yes, God, Miss Afeni, call him out. Start there. Start in the middle of the shit. Then she asked him when he said black people should go off and shoot someone or lynch someone, were you a police officer or a Panther when you said that? I said, I got to get the transcript of this case. He was like, well, I don't know. I don't remember. If you were there, why don't you remind me? I was like, motherfucker, you fucking up. This ain't going your way. So then she asked him, when you taught adolescent boys how to slit somebody's throat with a bayonet, were you a police officer or a Panther? See, all that shit started turning back on him. Because see, he was talking that shit in their meetings and shit, trying to convince them he was down for the cause. So they said she got him pissed. He was flaming angry to the point where he was spitting across the room trying to get his point across. Gotcha, bitch. All right. So then she asked him, have you ever seen me with a gun? He said, no. She said, have you ever seen me with a bomb? He said, no. She was like, have you ever seen me organizing in the community? He was like, yes. She was like, have you seen me organizing Liberation School? He was like, yes. He was apparently thinking that he was going to get over. And they said it went from her being on trial to it appearing like him on trial. I said, go off, Afeni, go off. I said, I got to find this transcript and teach this to my students next year. All right. So with the cases, Tupac was struggling for money. And that's the game. That's the game. Whenever you are somebody with power, keep them in court enough to keep them broke. They were doing the same thing to Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was always in jail. He was always in court. But see, what they didn't know is he believed in God. Let me tell you something. He'll give you money out of a fish's mouth. But anyway, no, not anyway. Just receive that in your spirit. So his case in Georgia got dismissed because they had no evidence against him. I was shocked, but I said, them dumb country motherfuckers probably. Anyway, so shout out to the home state. Not really. Not in this regard. So New York, however, he was not as lucky. So in November 1994, and I'm just loving the history of this all because I love Tupac, as y'all can tell. So somebody named Lil Sean called up Tupac and wanted Tupac to do a feature for like $7,500. And, his manager was like, it was chump change. He said, but Tupac's response was he had to get all he could get. He had a lot of people to take care of, and he had a lot of court fees and lawyer fees and stuff. So they said he goes to Quad Studios in New York. So they said he goes in the lobby, and these guys are waiting, almost like they're waiting for him. Like they knew he was coming, and they tell him to get down on the floor. And he resists like, I ain't doing shit. And they said he got shot 5 times and survived. And y'all know Tupac got shot, 9 times? Before he died, he was shot a lot. They said the first thing he did when he could talk was cry out for his mother. I said, kind of hurt me a little bit to hear that. It was just. So they said the same cop, though. This is where the fuck shit gets even fuckier. All right, so they said the same cop who came to the hotel and arrested him for the sexual assault, remember that, was the first cop to come to the scene of his shooting. And that was the beginning of his paranoia. Well, you know what? It would be for me too. Okay? All of this sounds like a conspiracy to kill a smart black man that had a dangerously large following. Okay? So let's be clear. We are talking about not even New York State, New York motherfucking city. What are the fucking chances that you could be, okay, in these situations and the same cop show up to the scene before anybody's called? Like this person is always there when some shit goes down. And I'm just sitting up here like, that sounds like bullshit. All right, and let's not forget his mother's police records, okay, are historical, legendary in New York. He's an intelligent rapper. He has his mother's last name, not his father's. And people can say conspiracies don't exist. The fuck they don't. Now, shit like the Illuminati, that dumb shit. Like, if y'all believe, um, there are this, two hands full of white people who have managed to colonize over half the world for almost a century, and then they just gonna let Beyonce and Jay-Z co-own it with them, you a dumb motherfucker. Sorry, you stupid. Okay, read more. All right, but as far as cops and singling out smart black people with charisma, as we have seen this over and over again, be it Paul Robeson, be it W.B. Du Bois, be it Martin Luther King, be it Malcolm X, be it the entire Black Panther Party, okay? Be it Angela Davis, be it Ella Baker, all these people with records for days because the police come after them. Okay, don't tell me there ain't no conspiracy against smart black people trying to organize. Fuck that shit, okay? And don't give me that shit about Patrice Coles and Black Lives Matter movement. I'm not talking about her fucking over that money, because that's what it's looking like and been looking like, and she's been a little too quiet for me. But I'm talking about the grassroots movement, okay? Not the one I didn't even know about. Black Lives Matter International. I didn't even know what the fuck that was until they announced that there had been mishandling of the money. Anyway, so the jury was still actually deliberating his sexual assault case at the time he shot. Now, this is where the Biggie versus Tupac East Coast West Coast bullshit goes off. So Biggie and Puff were at the same studio that night. Well, rappers work at night in the studio, whatever. And they said Tupac felt set up again. And he was wondering why they didn't help him or warn him, because they had been his friends. They said him and Biggie were actually good friends. Nobody in that documentary denied at all or said, well, they kind of had a rough relationship. They were like, they were friends. And apparently, I honestly would presume Puff would know something about that and not say nothing long before I would think that about Biggie. And don't ask me why I think that, but honestly, and y'all know Puff does his own shit, but let's be real. The motherfucker ain't known for being gangster. Okay? But I think when you're hurt physically and emotionally and scared, you start feeling like the people close to you are betraying you because they have. Shout out to Haitian Jack. I wouldn't be surprised if that motherfucker had something to do with this. And starting to feel like the people close to you are betraying you, and the way you deal with it is to just go ahead and make everybody an enemy, right? Because if you could make them all an enemy, then it doesn't hurt as bad. Then you're already ready and on edge. And I think come to get me. Oh well. All right. Anyway, so yeah, I just think that's, and if you notice those interviews with Biggie, they never his story never changes, even when he's like pissed. It's like, I never had anything to do with that. He was like, we helped him, we called the ambulance. And they're like, him and Puff, even like all these years later, they say the same, it's been the same fucking story. Like, we were right there for him. We don't know why he thought we would have anything to do with it. And all the shit that could go down in New York, honestly, and all the attention around Tupac, anything could have happened. And they were convenient scapegoats, I think, in many ways. So yeah. So Snoop Dogg and Even on Glow was like, I have no idea how this East Coast, West Coast stuff just got so bad so quick. They were like, because they were friends. And Snoop was clear. He made it clear. He was like, since this shit is up, since we got it out here in the air, let me be clear. Biggie had nothing to do with that. Honestly, Biggie's story, like I said, never changed in interviews. Even when he was talking shit. Like, Puff told the story the same. Puff and Biggie always told that story the same way. So then we get Jasmine Guy / Whitley Gilbert, okay? She said she flew up to New York the day after she heard he had gotten shot that night. And she said by the time she got to Bellevue, which is the hospital where he was being held, they had told her that he had left. He checked himself out just hours after having surgery. And they said Billy, his father, showed up to the hospital to see him too. They said his father showed up. He was in a vulnerable position, but the people at the hospital were like, what's your relationship? He said, I'm his father. They said, we heard his father is dead. I'm just like, people say wild shit. So Afeni said the issue was he didn't feel safe in the hospital. Like she said, he was paranoid. She helped him stay at Jasmine Guy's apartment while he recovered. She said nobody knew where he was and nobody suspected where he was because nobody knew that Jasmine Guy and him were friends. I'm gonna be honest, till this day, I still have a hard time putting it together. I really do. Um, and he stayed at Jasmine Guy's apartment while he recovered. Then we flash back to Afeni Shakur and the Black Panther Party during 1971, and I love the way they are mirroring their experiences with the government. Um, so there was an East Coast and West Coast tension. It started with the different Black Panther parties. It's crazy, right? So they had lost a lot of their membership, the Black Panther Party in general, across the country, because so many of them were going to prison. So many of them were being killed by the police. It just didn't seem like it was the kind of organization anybody wanted to be a part of it anymore because it was so unsafe. Um, and I get it. Everybody's not willing to die for the cause. I get it. So COINTELPRO, okay, had managed to set even members of the Black Panther Party up against each other. So they were taking pics of the Panthers with guns, right? Just happened to be one time when Huey was giving a speech. Afeni wasn't there for whatever reason that particular day. Huey P. Newton was in town. And they had guns, and somebody took a picture and claimed that the East Coast and West Coast Panthers were about to fight each other. And it wasn't. It just happened to be the way they were situated. Well, Huey P. Newton, who was the co-founder of the Black Panther Party along with Bobby Seale, said, look, we know this has hit the news. It doesn't make sense for us to go to court, and they're going to give us 300 plus years. So let's go underground. And I know from studying the Black Panthers, they had certain places outside the country that they would go to hide. Okay? There were certain countries, because of their relationship to the United States, and resented the United States for the kind of oppression they inflicted upon Black people, who were more associated with the Soviet Union or not associated with US or Soviet Union at all, because they believed in liberation, that they could go to be safe. But Afeni and Joanne Shakur didn't know that they were going underground that day. Nobody told them any fucking thing. We can say this was before cell phones, but somebody should have knocked on the fucking door or gave them a call. Okay? Showed up at the court the next day in an attempt to defend themselves as Panthers. They're still thinking that the party is having their back. They don't even know these motherfuckers have left. Okay? And they up here giving their lives for the cause. So they said Afeni shows up, her bail is taken away, and this is how you know there was a larger conspiracy. Because they know that these Black Panthers are going underground. How they know? If they ain't part of Black Panthers. Exactly. All right. This was barely 24 hours in between time. So she shows up, her bail is taken away, and she's remanded. And that's to place somebody in custody once their trial is adjourned and over with. So Aunt Glo said she was betrayed in a way she couldn't have even imagined by her comrades. Like, she was like, they went to some country called Algiers. All right. So we're talking about Northern Africa, Algeria. There were other places I know, and I'm talking for me. I know North Korea, places like Cuba, different parts of Asia and Africa where they were accepting of them because they knew what they were enduring in the United States. But Afeni was left holding the bag, so to speak. So they said this affected Afeni. And I was like, I'd be fucked up too after sacrificing that way. And the people I'm in the party with ran off without telling me shit. Like, I'm locked up and they're free and didn't take me with them. That's some bullshit. You would feel like that. I was like, and that kind of stuff, that's when they talk about other people ending up on crack, cocaine, heroin. Many of these people have PTSD. If all this shit was happening to you and you still have somehow had the stamina to endure, that doesn't come without some trauma. Period. So Afeni was pregnant with Tupac while she was in jail when they remanded her or whatever. She was 5 months pregnant. They have her doing her voiceover. This is not something somebody else is saying. With no prenatal care, no healthy food. It was stuff like powdered eggs, like she'd have to pay extra just to get some milk and like natural eggs or whatever. And they said she lost weight while in prison, but Tupac was still gaining weight. And then they have Tupac's voiceover, and he said, I wasn't born in prison, but I was cultivated in it. Then the Black Panther Party found out in this process about COINTELPRO, and the FBI documents were exposed to the press. And the press, of course, tells the other parts of the country. This is all happening at the same time. And so some of the Panthers were like, it was clear how diabolical the nation and the government was. Like, we had no idea that they had this whole system pitting us against each other. And we had no idea some of the tensions. And then you're finding out about more snitches and setups and all this other stuff. And it was clear all the things they thought they were paranoid about were actually just true. They just didn't know the genesis of it in terms of the government. So Athene, they have her voiceover again, and she's talking about how she didn't think she was meant to have kids. She had 3 miscarriages up until she couldn't carry a kid past the 3rd month without miscarrying. And she said, so Tupac was not supposed to be here. And she said the fact that I had 3 miscarriages, and she said even as I was losing weight, my son was gaining weight and living. She said clearly God had a reason for this child to live. She said the question just was, what was that reason? And I was like, I believe that. I believe that. I do believe God works like that. So they said Tupac never believed that some of his internal hurt and pain was that he never believed any black person would shoot him. He said he always thought he was safe in his own community. He saw himself as a representative for the community. And they said his trial, when, you know, he still had the sexual assault charges. He was barely healing from his surgery because he had checked himself out of the hospital. Hell, he had been shot 5 times any damn way. His trial was literally held in the same place his mother's trial was, where she gave her own defense. And I was like, that has to be, you can look back on that historically and say, wow, but for that to be you in that moment, that shit has to be traumatic as fuck. Like, I did all this so my kid wouldn't have this kind of life. So they said Tupac's words in his case, he said to the judge at the end, he hadn't said anything the whole trial, and he told the judge, he said, you never looked at me or my attorney in the eye once during this whole trial. And I was always taught that is a sign of, when somebody can't do that, that's a sign of guilt. It's a sign of disrespect. It's another form of racism when people do that. And my mother always said, you can never trust a person who cannot look you in the eye, but you always walk around with your head up. And Athene's trial ended, and her trial ultimately ended in several not guilty verdicts. Especially after all of that COINTELPRO shit came out, the jury found her not guilty. However, Tupac's trial in that same building, some 20 years later, ended in a guilty verdict, as he sat there with bandages from his shooting around his head, around his hand. And that just seemed like one of those governmental acts that was like, we may not get you in the wash, but we'll damn sure get you in the rinse. We'll get your kids. And while Tupac was cleared of the rape charges, they said he was still guilty of other assault charges. He was given 4.5 years for sexual assault charges. We know he doesn't serve all the time. They said he was so depressed. His aunt Glow was like, he was depressed. He was so depressed. She said that he actually said out loud, she said he was sitting in there in Jasmine Guy's apartment with a gun, a rifle. He could barely move, and he had all these bandages. And she said he was so depressed, he was so low, that he said, I'm not going to turn myself in. He told the guys that were around him, you're going to take me in a Cadillac, and you're going to drive me someplace far. And I'm going to smoke a lot of weed. And then call Matulu and tell him that one of us got away. She said he wanted to be killed. And she said, I cried my guts out to hear my nephew say he wanted to be killed. She said it was hard for me when his mother was pregnant with him, and his mother was saying, look, I want you to raise Tupac, because she never thought she would get out of prison. And she said, and now I'm watching him after a trial wanting to take his own life. She said he had such utter despair that he wanted to kill himself. She said, and that just hurt me. She said, and Afeni heard him, and she got on her knees and said to him, I don't care what anybody calls you. You can never believe that. You put one foot in front of the other and just write. And I thought that was incredible advice. Like, you just keep going. I don't care if you go to jail. You keep going. And I think she was saying just right, like continue your gift. And that was deep to me. I'm still on it. And I think all of this was well done. But y'all get down in the comments, let me know what y'all think. Um, yeah, be sure to like the video. And I'm sorry about that interruption. I got scared. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all soon. I'll see y'all for Love and Marriage Huntsville. All right, bye.